I'm so glad you all came. I'm so excited for the program tonight about George Washington and Washington and his stuff. Before we go to the hospital and his medicinal herb. So Leon and Linda Lubke, y'all.
I know a lot of people really recognize this. It's Leo. And this is not Mariah.
Martha. Martha. My ancestor, my Revolutionary patriot was Josiah Buckley, and his wife's name was Maria.
Oh,
And actually, my dad would have been Heinrich Frank. Originally came from Germany and went to Philadelphia, then meandered my way up to central New York, the Utica area, and had a chance really to fight in the General's War. And the outfit that I worn was standard, and I did the research and with the SAR brothers and compatriots, and said, you know, this is where my ancestor, my great-grandfather was from. What would have been the outfit that he would have worn? Well, he was in the militia, private in the militia from central New York, and I did my research and I knew what the possibilities were, the shirts and possible vests and the neck cravat, I guess, and so forth, and shoes. And so I went back to my compatriots at Stephen Holston Chapter and showed them what I'd come up with, and I wanted their input. Because they're really, I mean, it's positively dyed in the wool. People will do it right. You know? And they went through my list of things and checked. Oh, great selection. I got the coat, overcoat to go with it, the hat, and so forth. So exactly the same type of hat that Heinrich would have worn in the 1770s. So anyway, what we're going to do is move on to the show if I can find everything here. Some of you probably thought when you saw the when you saw the announcement, the little cards I gave out, George Washington, you know, we should really be doing something about George Washington. And you were very polite about it. You need to say, what's that got to do with Mr. Gardner? And I thought, well, that's a good opportunity to give old George applaud. He was more than just the first president of the United States, the father of our country. But in readings that I've had, even when he was in the middle of battle, different sections, he was looking at that row of linden trees. He was looking at that design and that particular property. I was thinking of plants. And then when he was, of course, commander-in-chief, but he saw America as a country, people not by soldiers, but by farmers, a growing society that would be industrious, happy where swords and spears have given place to plowshare and pruning books. On returning to Mount Vernon, New Garden was truly American. He recorded what seemed to work and what was a failure. Went on step by step and showed fellow gardeners and other plantations what really works and what doesn't. Now I know this is when you were in your master gardener training, you were thinking, oh, rotted common manure. I never heard of it. That's probably a good idea. Well, George was doing it in the late 1770s and early 1780s. He would build a shelter, which was the dung depository, and he would go to the fellow plantation owners and say, you know, I really noticed when I put this rather common in, I had enormous crops, you know, and he was really talking that up. Didn't more than just that. I know in your master gardening class you talked about plowing green ground cover under. He was advocating that then. And how many of you heard about the rotation of crops? Did you talk about? He had a 7-year plan that worked the best, and he was sharing that with the fellow plantation owners. This, by the way, is a picture, a replica of the dung repository. They had the plans that George drew up, built it according to his plans, and that's now for visitors to see. I think because of all of the scientific approach that he was using, recording, jotting down, and educating others, does that sound like something the Master Gardeners do?
Yeah.
I think that we could probably consider him as America's first Master Gardener too, along with other things. So, man of many talents, and we are going to give a presentation that is going to introduce myself. I think you know, Sons of the American Mission member, Stephen Holston chapter, and also in the General Society of the War of 1812, lifetime Master Gardener, Tennessee, New York. Served formerly on the International Master Gardener Committee, retired now after 6 years of a 2-year term. Yeah, the term limits too. They kept making exceptions. Anyway, Linda, DAR members, Mr. Fleck, chapter here in Sevier, U.S. Daughters of 1812.
I'm also treasurer. I'm not sure how I got that job, but I'm a lifetime Master Gardener here in Tennessee. I just got my 15-year pin next December, and I enjoy both gardening and photography.
So does that make you
What we're hoping to do, this brief introduction, then talk about the medical issues of the American Revolution, the types of conditions that existed, the treatment locations right in the battlefield, and also area facilities. What kind of staffing was there in these medical units, and medicinal herbs and their roles, and finally a conclusion. Probably with a little quiz or survey at the end just to see how we're doing.
You can ask two teachers to do a program in that respect.
The journey begins really with Linda and me when she gave me a birthday present. My birthday's in the middle of May, and she had learned someplace that the Philadelphia Herb Society had a massive herb sale at Yellow Springs, Pennsylvania. And when does he want to go? It's in
And he would drive.
mid-May each year. And that's the top picture in the upper right-hand corner. That was the view that we had when we first got there. And isn't that weird? All these people with wagons and carts and wheelbarrows waiting to get into the sale. And why would anybody drag a wagon along? Okay, well, now the lower left-hand corner, that was the free-for-all. They have over 10,000 herbs. Just herbs for sale there, and they offer the more exotic, the different ones that are hard to find. The second year, however, that we went was pictured in the lower right-hand corner, herb sale today, where the sign says, and we had our wagon with us. Yeah, we learned the first time that we were there, it opens at 10 and closes at 2, and by 11 o'clock, we were like this, and went to our van, left the stuff, went running back and got another armful and relay races. So the big wagon really met our needs. So while we were there, the people in the Herb Society were very sociable, and you get to talk with them. Oh, have you been here before and all? And make sure before you leave, you stop up and see George Washington's Military Hospital. So that sounded kind of interesting. And they said, you know, this is where it is. You just go back down this road where this line is, and you make a left, and that's immediately on your right. And easy to walk. We finished then close to 2, and after 2 we said, well, let's just stop in and see what it is. And we were amazed and really impressed with the grounds and also the work that the Philadelphia Herb Society had done.
I'm just going to interject with one thing. This massive sale, the Herb Society has under 40 members. So we thought the tea was a crowd.
Yeah. So this is Yellow Springs, and the Yellow Springs, it's actually a place, Yellow Springs, Pennsylvania, but originated with these Yellow Springs. Now you can see where the gazebo roof is, that's where the spring really is. And the reason shows it's a high iron content, and so there's a coating of iron oxide, I guess, all over yellow. And of course, that was interesting. And bearing washings, by the way, some of you might be turned off a little bit. Oh, that's Pennsylvania. That's not Sevier County, and so forth and so forth. It's the same USDA hardiness zone as we have here in Sevier County, 7A or 7B in that range. So anything you see here is for here too. Okay, well, here we were, y'all strengths, and I think you'll agree, very peaceful. In fact, I don't know, last August, I think it was, the convict that broke out of the penitentiary in Pennsylvania, 2 weeks, they could find, they closed the schools and pretty much made everybody sheltered in place. This was 20 miles from where this gazebo is. So you can see the lush vegetation, how hard it would be to find somebody in there, and finally they had a blood hound that found him. But anyway, very peaceful setting. And before you start taking a nap on this, not so peaceful in the surrounding area. The British are coming. You can see the redcoats in the distance. And you can see the militia fighting tooth and nail. That created a problem for the area on 2 counts. One was we have to take care of the wounded or sick, and we've got to kind of push the line back too. So this is typically what a camp would look like. This is actually Valley Forge. Linda and I went to the International Master Gardener Conference in Valley Forge, and this was a tour from the Master Gardener Conference. I think that's just where we took the picture, actually. But we went to the tour, included Valley Forge, and they depicted what life was really like through a lot of artwork, and it was really a tough time, a tough area too. The troops did not have adequate clothing. They didn't have adequate bedding. They didn't even have enough shoes for everybody, and so what they had to do, there would be 1 pair of shoes for 3 patriots, and they would take turns. And that must be your turn today for your shoes. And you can see even in the shelter back there, the gentleman with a rag wrapped around his foot. Well, you didn't have shoes on, you had to have something on your feet, so you took anything you could get. Tough time, and we'll talk more about that. George Washington really had a hard time with having his troops have to put up with this and get to that. Of course, you can imagine the risk of the war, and you think probably, first of all, front line risk. They're going to be shooting cannons and musket balls after us and so forth. But that's only part of the problem. If the war didn't kill the soldier, seeking treatment in a shelter was not good. Soldiers had a 98% chance of survival on the battlefield, but only 75% chance if they got sent to a hospital. So the problem really was health care, this health care that wasn't there. In summary, it's estimated 6,800 soldiers were killed in battle, but 17,000 died of disease. It's just 25,000 were wounded remained. They had to have some way of treating the Patriots, and so they often would just put up a tent in the middle of the field someplace. It was horrible. You can see one wounded guy, I guess, on the table. One thing you probably noticed, no masks like you would have in a hospital setting today. I don't see an autoclave. I don't even see boiling water. And what would happen is that they would finish taking out the bullet from this guy, not wash anything at all, probably not even wipe anything, and off to the next table they would go, and then do whatever yeah, they had to do there. And then the next, I mean, it was just, they didn't have the knowledge or the actually equipment, do it. So that's why disease, these were petri dishes, you know, just waiting to explode.
Well, they didn't know about the germ theory of disease until the 1790s.
They were still into leeching.
And that was in Europe.
And that was early, yeah.
They were still into leeching and bloodletting.
So this is actually Valley Forge, and if you haven't been there, it's well worth the time. But they had huts like this for the patriots to stay in, and often served as a place for influenza, dysentery, typhoid, typhus killed 2/3 of nearly the 2,000 soldiers in Valley Forge alone. So you can see the problem really was more the treatment of the patriots than it was out on the battlefield. Of course, they have, I won't call them actors, interpreters, I guess is what the National Park would call them, people that explain what happened there and tell you the history about it. And so in one of those cabins that Linda had photographed, they had this medical display set up, and it had the vials of medicine that were probably used. And they had also Dr. Patrick Peters. Now, he really wasn't a doctor, but why did he play the part of one? Introduced her for some time with the AR, and we're thinking about doing a program sometime on this, and I introduced me. Oh, you would have thought. Suddenly the red carpet rolled out, and it was just anything that I can do for Leo and Linda. Here, let me tell you firsthand and personal about the tools I would have used in those tents. Well, I'll ask you. You see something that looks like a hacksaw? What was that used for, you think? Stone saw. And you see the little picks, the hooks, reaching into the wound and dragging out the bullets. The knife looks like a carving knife, and it probably was. But anyway, I don't see any anesthetics here, though. Anesthetics were.
No, with alcohol and biting.
Yeah, and that's it. What we sometimes did is put a rolled up coil of cloth in the Patriot's mouth. So, because the tendency would be to bite your tongue off. It was so much pain, but with a cloth there, that saved that a little bit. But anyway, enough of that. I think you get the idea of what's going on. They also had to use abandoned houses, barns, taverns. Linda found these two buildings that quite probably could have been used to treat the sick. Typical colonial tavern. At this point, George Washington really got into the act, and on September 25th, he wrote to Dr. Samuel Kennedy and said, if you're obliged to make use of churches or houses that have no fireplaces, you should at least purchase stoves to make them warm and comfortable. So that tells you right there that these places that they have for these sick patriots, no, not even heat, taverns and schoolhouses frequently used, cramped, unsatisfactory. In Reading, they even recorded 69 soldiers and their 6 female nurses were found in the courthouse, the Trinity Church, the Reformed Church, Friends Meeting House, Potter Shop, and various residences.
That's at least 6 places for 6 nurses.
Yeah, to rotate around. So you can see the deplorable condition, and it's one that George Washington certainly recognized. And so now getting back to, do you remember the name of this place? Yellow Springs. Okay, Yellow Springs, the peaceful place. They thought that would be an excellent place for a military hospital, you know? And there were several reasons for it, and some very good reasons. For one thing, it was a popular, developed area. People had been coming to the springs for several years. And they would, in Philadelphia primarily, hop in their wagon or coaching, and that was a 33-mile route to have this is where the water would make you well, and drink it, that's even better, and so forth. And so it's a popular tourist place, I guess as we would call it today. And oh, by the way, I know some of you are looking at wagons and coaches and say, got we on that one, that's a typo. Sometimes I used colonial spelling. of what the words are, and wagons was what it was known as during colonial times. And healthy coaches too, with the college was the coaching. Another reason for this area was a good strategic area, and I'm not sure why, but the lay of the land appeared to be good. The British appeared to avoid this type of area, so naturally you can't be building a hospital where British are going to be aiming their cannons at it and massacring it. So this seemed to be a place, and I don't know, it's just me speaking, it could have been the dense vegetation in that area and the rollingness of the whole area.
They couldn't get a clear shot.
Yeah. It was near the areas of medical need. Wanted the hospital as close as possible. Now, first of all, I know they didn't have interstate highways during the Revolutionary War.
They didn't even have Google Maps.
But the maps were good to show what I wanted. You can see the Yellow Springs, I've got the arrow in the picture. And so that was the location. And this is where Valley Forge is. That's only 9 miles away. There were no battles ever fought at Valley Forge, but 2,000 died from disease. So disease was really rampant in that area. Still another area, Chad's Fort, probably not many have heard of that, but you've heard of Brandywine, probably. We really lost our shirt there. So really, it's the same thing. 250 of our soldiers were killed, another 600 wounded, and 400 captured. So kind of a serious situation there. And that was 20 miles from the Yellow Springs, where they were thinking about possibly building a hospital. Another reason is that Dr. Samuel Kennedy offered the land. Dr. Kennedy was a local physician, and remember the houses and the barns and taverns and so forth. He was probably one of those local physicians that made the rounds, treating patients in barns and taverns, and he had a chance to purchase this Yellow Springs area in 1774. And he too thought that this would be a nice place, and he would donate the land for the hospital because that was suitable to Washington. He's buried, Sam Kennedy is buried 5 miles from the hospital, and you can see he was only 48 years of age. Now, it doesn't give the reason, the cause of his death, but you'll notice in a lot of these workers that were there, many of them died from the diseases that they had picked up from soldiers and treating them. And I think that could have happened with him as well. Another reason for the area, Yellow Springs, General Washington visited that area often and probably has good memories. George Washington actually grew up in Stafford County, Virginia, a place called Berry Farm. That's near Fredericksburg, Virginia. And lots of times when you mention George Washington, in addition to saying chop the cherry tree, you would think Mount Vernon. Actually, it's quite home is now been restored. It's overlooking the Rappahannock River, and that's where there's a ferry landing right close by, so very far from the Rappahannock River. But George was never really content to stay there, just busy. I don't like the clientele going through here. Sometimes people will say too many tourists, that so he's watching to describe this land around the Rappahannock River. Crowded, busy, and a trouble-filled place of limited options. And I think couldn't wait to kind of get out of there and go to a place peaceful like the Potomac or Mount Vernon. Very interested in surveying, as you probably all know, and one of the assignments he had was to join the Fairfax Party and survey a section near Berkeley Springs, West Virginia. That was a popular spa town, and it had a spring which had the water was 74.3 degrees year round. And so people were flocking there and was kind of taken by it too. But from Fredericksburg, which is near where he grew up, to Berkeley Springs, that hike. If you were driving it on one route, it would take 2 hours and 25 minutes. And 128 miles, I guess, and still another route. But they had a horse and wagon or riding horse bareback, I guess. Late 18th century, would have taken them for quite a while, probably 3 days, 3 40-mile trip days. The average walking speed of a horse is 3 to 4 miles an hour, but it can get us around 8 miles per hour. You know, so they could have trimmed some of the time down, but still, it's a trip. But at the same time, George went there and he said, we have this day called, you see, ye famed warm springs. Pleasant memories of that, and what really sealed the deal was his brother Lawrence had tuberculosis and not good at all, and George, like any of us would do if our sibling was really sick, and we thought maybe if we drove to that spot, that would prolong his life a little bit. So in 1750 and 1751, he went to the springs with Lawrence, hoping that the waters would cure the tuberculosis. And unfortunately, sadly, Lawrence died in 1752 at the age of 34. So all the trips there. But he did what he could. Today, these are the springs that they went to, still in operation today. You can see a little sign, kind of the left-hand side, George Washington's bathtub. That's his favorite place. Now it's a lot of families that are there, and you can see the pools. Same type of water. If you want to, you can even relive a part of history. To honor George Washington on March 18th, 1748, they now have an annual celebration in mid-March to celebrate George Washington being there. There's George Washington's bathtub. Disclaimer, Linda and I did not go in it. Sat on the edge and put our feet in it. Okay, so Washington had good memories, and so this would be good for these reasons. It would be Yellow Springs, the site of the first military hospital. One little problem, we still have this problem today, money. Who's going to pay for this? George all along has said, my troops, remember in the beginning, troops they didn't have coats, they didn't have blankets, they didn't have shoes. They didn't have shoes. Yeah, and so that was another problem. Anyway, off he went to Congress and explained the whole situation. You know, troops in sad shape, are getting sick. We have no means of taking care of the sick and the wounded and so forth. And this is what he said specifically with the 2,898 of us, 11,000 troops at Valley Forge unfit for duty due to illness or lack of clothing 4 days after they arrived. We don't do something without adequate provisions. The Army must inevitably starve, dissolve, or disperse. I mean, kind of drawing a picture the way it was. And also, by the way, to alleviate the medical situation, he suggested a building be designed just as a hospital for the military wounded.
So they didn't have to go in a tavern or take a dedicated hospital.
There's another little caveat too, and I heard a lot about this during the COVID vaccination, and smallpox was just going rampant in the camps, and George was instrumental in this. Absolutely a must if you're going to fight in our army, you must have the vaccination. They had people that were in charge of the vaccination, otherwise smallpox would have wiped out another 10,000 or so. So that was another case that he made at that point. I know this is hard to believe because we have such a smooth running government. They listen and okay, makes sense and all that. But actually, many were advised against the hospital. And a physician, Dr. Benjamin Rush, for example, there's no need for a hospital. With the progress of science, someday would abolish today for the hospital for acute diseases. And furthermore, described them as sinks and cesspools of human life.
Oh, my.
We won't have any of that. So anyway, George and company were back and said, you know, we really want to have you consider this, and this is how much money we need. And finally they voted, and yes, that was yes. They passed more materials for the troops, and also the plans, and also a little bit for the small vaccination. So the hospital began 1778, and it was called Washington Hall. It was designed as a hospital, and that was the first one that was heard of. This is the only close thing that came to it were some of those small log huts that you saw in Valley Forge, but not really what I consider hospital. In fact, they call them flying hospitals. Here's a sketch of probably what was happening. You can see the scaffolding is up, and the red, white, and blue, and the pipe and drummer, and well, it's just a activity all over the place, putting the wooden structure together on that stone foundation. Another sketch. It was grand. It was 106 feet long, 36 foot deep, 9 foot high porches. There was an attic, small rooms, 2 large wards on the second floor, and on the ground level was the utilitarian area. The dining area was in the center, and the kitchen on the far right hand end. It could handle 1,300 ailing men, and many of them were suffering from typhus. And now I know this probably doesn't to us today sound that great, but it was a miracle. They had less than 1 out of 6 die that had been treated in the hospital. And that was considered by those standards a very good record. It was also accepted fact that it was clean and well managed. Remember the bandages and the cleaning equipment and stuff like that. They were really down on that. Washington visited and made a bid farewell, and then he left Valley Forge in June 1778. The hospital closed, 1781. Yorktown, probably the most significant part. British had been defeated there, and so the war was pretty much over in 1781. There would be no further need for this hospital, was the thought. This had idle until 1861, became a Civil War hospital. Later became an orphans home, literary institute. Fire took it in 1876, but not being done, it was rebuilt. Claimed it again, however, in 1964, and that was it. Only the wheel stone remained. And at that time, the Philadelphia unit of the Herb Society decided, you know, we'd like to really reconstruct that herb garden that was at the hospital. And so they went out then, and as luck would have it, they found the lecture notes from Dr. William Shippen. Remember I mentioned him earlier, from 1765, where he had described the medicinal medical herbs at that time and what they were the cure for. So with that list then, I'm sure at that time those 37 people, I think 37 Herb Society people got their trowels and shovels and started planting. Today you can visit the ruins and the herb garden, and remember this is what it was like. And this is what's left of it now. The stone foundation is there. This is from the front, looking from the street. See this white opening right here in this front wall. That was the dining room. And to the far right of it was the kitchen. And looking down from the top, you can see the kitchen area, the dining room is right to the right of that green grassy area. But you can see what's left of what was kind of a form of a beehive oven, which is in the far end of the kitchen. And there's a close-up from a different angle. You can see starting the curvature of the top of the oven. This is a utilitarian room in the foreground, and then through that doorway would be the dining room. Uses of the utilitarian room. I really didn't really read anything on how it was used, but I can only imagine, judging it being on the ground level, that I could picture a wagon pulling up with sick and wounded men needing help, and so it probably was like what we would know today as a hospital admitting, or maybe a MASH incoming, that type of area. Remember, this is on the ground, and this is on the left-hand side of the first floor. Also, another utilitarian room use was probably the removal. I mean, there were deaths that occurred at the hospital and it had to be taken care of, so I would think it probably served as a removal area, transport for burial. That's just Leo speaking, I don't know. But I do know that this hospital was built on rock and heavy stones, big, just impossible to grow anything there that we'll talk about in a minute. So what do you do with these bodies? And I would only surmise that probably that cart would go down the hill to it's like an alluvial plain next to the stream where it was softer ground. I would think that could have been a burial area. Just to give you a little perspective on this, if you see the stream on the left-hand side, just follow that stream down. That's a stream that still goes through the herb garden sale. And it's a wide grassy area like that where they have the sale. So about the size of a football field, I would say, that they used. No cemeteries near the hospital, so I think probably burials near streams of softer ground.
In colonial times, there were very few physicians and no medical schools. If you wanted to be a physician or a healer, you apprenticed with somebody. And anybody who wanted to could call themselves doctor. It wasn't any kind of a degree. You could just call yourself doctor and set up practice. And the Army Medical Department obviously had problems from the beginning to elect truly trained medical personnel. One of the physicians at the hospital was Dr. Simon Kennedy. He was appointed to the position by Mad Anthony Blaine. I don't even remember him from high school. He was appointed senior surgeon and had served at other hospitals and medical facilities before he came to Yellow Springs. He died from typhus that was obviously he contracted from the soldiers he was caring for.
You can see a step there, somebody's on the A, so kind of a giveaway.
Another one was William Shippen. He was the doctor who donated the land for the hospital. He was trained, and he was a systematic teacher of anatomy, and one of the first people to use dissected human bodies. It was considered not appropriate to dissect the human body, but he tried it. And another one was Dr. Bodo Otto. He grew up in Germany. He didn't come to the U.S. until he was age 65. He directed the smallpox inoculation for the Army, and his sons, Frederick, John, and Bodo Jr., assisted their father at both Trenton, New Jersey, and Yellow Springs. Nurses are a very important part. And again, no medical training, you just took over and did what needed to be done. They helped to feed and bathe the patients, they changed their dressings. And of course, they got to clean and cook. What else could the woman do? So good start. Abigail Hartman Rice, she was one of the major nurses here that worked at the hospital. Her German-speaking family came and settled near the Schuylkill River. She was just an ordinary person who happened to come to that area. She married Zachariah Bryce, and her original visits to the hospital were simply to boost the morale of the soldiers. You know, they haven't seen a woman in a long time, so here she is, and she's come and make them happy. And that changed to offering medical attention to them, something.
This kind of caught my eye because the person I'm dressed up as came from Germany and came from Rotterdam, and I think 1748 to Philadelphia. So it's that same pattern of immigrants.
According to her family Bible, it's General Washington, she entertained him. General Washington stopped at her home and asked for a drink of water. Being the magnificent hostess that she was, she sent one of her children to go get some water, and she fixed him a drink. The house that she lived in still exists. It's called Clover Hill Farm, and it's on the National Register of Historic Places. And she made General Washington a special drink. She got water, she had some sugar and some spices, and some rum. And it was a drink known as a flip, and I'm not sure if that's what happened after the drink. What exactly, but she handed him the drink and said, "Here, my lord." And he straightened her right out by saying, "We have no titles here, we are all brothers." And her 5-year-old daughter, as any 5-year-old kid would do, walked up to him, he picked her up and put him on her knee and jiggled her while he was finishing his drink, which I thought made him a real ordinary person. Abigail Hartman Rice and her friends were very successful in helping to raise the wages for nurses. If you look at the bottom, surgeons in apothecaries, that would be a druggist, earned $40 a month. In 1776, a nurse got $2 a month. By 1777, she had organized the other ladies that were nurses, and they got their wages up to $8 a month. And poor Mrs. Rice, she didn't have enough problems taking care of the wounded soldiers. Her grave marker reads, "Some have children, some have none. Here lies the mother of 21. What else did you have to do besides take care of 21 kids? Probably not all of them made it to adulthood, but here's your soldiers as well.
Pretty good way, right?
Yeah.
She died at 47.
Ready to go.
She paid the price as well, because she died at the young age of 47, suffering from typhus that she had contracted while helping the soldiers. Another nurse was Christina Hench. She was Abigail's neighbor, and they worked together to care for the soldiers, but Joanna's husband also let the soldiers slaughter 40 of his cattle and pick fruit from his orchard. Now, for those of you that are in DAR or Sons of the American Revolution, you know that your ancestor, your patriot ancestor, does not necessarily have to have carried a gun and fired it at someone. Any one of these three people could be a patriot ancestor because they aided the soldiers. Johann let them slaughter his cattle and fed them, and Christina and Abigail cared for the soldiers. So they would be, if you can trace your ancestry back to any one of those three, you can get into DAR or SAR. They were true patriots, and as they helped the colonial soldiers survive. And then she realized they were just plain ordinary women that took care of what needed to be done.
The hospital staff realized the importance of herbal remedies, and sources included. And we heard Karen's presentation on Native American culture and the impact that had, using a variety of things that could be found in the environment. So because of Karen's super job, skip past that, we also had other past experiences in the colonies. English legacy, for example, people came from England and they brought with them what seemed to work in England. And in a lot of cases, they would bring seeds, maybe even cuttings of plants to Williamsburg or wherever they were going. Also, colonial life itself, just living here, what happens when you have this sickness, what seems to work, what doesn't, and so forth. In fact, if you visit now places like Williamsburg, you'll see gardens like this. A lot of the plantings actually came from England. In fact, I was in one of the bookstores and I saw the English Physician Enlarged with 369 medicines made of English herbs. And they had found this, and they actually had reproductions of it, which I thought was kind of interesting. Also, bringing up children in colonial times. That children are taught at a young age how to plant things, how to care for it, what to eat, what not to eat, and so forth. You see a friend of mine, Wes Green, director of gardens at Williamsburg, showing the kids how to do it in this little enactment. And afterwards had a good chat with Leslie, and he's since retired from the garden, from Williamsburg Gardens, and now writes books. I just get programs told them. But medicinal herbs are available in populated areas, urban areas. Williamsburg, for example, you can see this shingle that was hanging on and what it looked like inside with a variety of concoctions that were bound to cure just about anything. However, meanwhile, back at the ranch, back in Yellow Springs, no drugstore in sight for remote areas such as Yellow Springs. They had to use great resourceful nuts, herbs, and grow them close to the hospital where they would be readily available. Next series of pictures, Linda has taken around the ruins to give you a better lay of the land. And you can see this is looking toward the street that goes down to the herb sale. The large lawn in front of it, and then this little plateau area in the center. This probably shows it a little bit better from a different angle, looking at it from one end. The herb beds on either side of the bed with paths down the center, and right adjacent, exactly adjacent to the ruins. And this is the section that the Philadelphia unit of the Herb Society put under their wing in 1987, and decided that they would plant many of the plants that were from a lecture given by Dr. Shipman. I'd like to have Linda, she'll give you a handout to give you a better idea of the herb garden, but this is the disclaimer. The following information that we're going to talk about is intended for educational purposes only and should not be considered as a recommendation or an endorsement of any particular medical or health treatment. Before using any medicinal herbs, be sure to check with your medical doctor or professional. Improper use may cause sickness or death. Everybody understand what that means? Anybody want further explanation?
And please don't try to reach out. You got all the time.
He can try leeches.
That probably is one thing.
Sounds like he can try anything. We need one more. No, we're good, we're good, we're good.
You got it?
We're getting settled into this. We'd like to give thank yous to certain people responsible for literally being here. Matthew, of course, really appreciate the support that he always gives us. Andrew, been working with you for 3 months, I guess, on this, and kind of see what we could do and so forth. And what reminded me, Debbie Hurst, very helpful, supporting us all the way and getting materials around and so forth. So thanks to all of you. With it, then let's start the little tour. Consider the reason for this, and I've got the complete list inside. By the way, this is what you have that you'll pick up if you go to the gardens themselves. It's in a wooden box that's sponsored by the Herb Society, and just needs copies of it. I asked them if they would send copies, they never got back to me, so we did it on our own. But consider adding these plants to your garden or landscape, or start a colonial medicinal herb garden yourself. I think we have a good start on that already in the teaching patch. Okay, anybody know what this is? On.
You know the plan?
Okay. Well, butterfly. Okay, that's one that's listed. The format that I'm going to use.
Or chiggerweed, as the old people called it.
Okay.
Oh.
Okay. The format that we're using on these next series of pictures, yeah, also, one of those, cure for was the leg stimulant, respiratory ailments. Then also one other thing that we put on here, L&L, Leo and Linda garden / landscape. We have it in our garden and landscape. So you might want to be thinking of this. If any of you are doing the herb garden, yeah, remember you had this and like, just give us a call. We probably have seeds or we have cuttings or transplants, depending on the season, we could share with you. So the reason for that. Okay, plans here. Everybody knows this, I think. Good for wounds, headaches, neuralgia, nervous system.
Our Band-Aids.
Oh, that would be cool.
Okay, box flow, heart stimulant mostly. I have that we have this normally, we have it, but I don't know. I've got to really check to see what happened with that 5 degree below zero weather and what's going to come back this year. So, I mean, we'll see on that. I can't look at the picture, but I don't think about how it was taken though. We were at the Master Gardener Conference and then we went out to the gardens and said, well, we want to do a show on this and we're taking pictures of everything. We agree with it. So we went back to the car just to sit to catch our breath. And we were looking through it and I said, I don't remember seeing a foxglove anyplace. And so we looked through everything again, didn't have it. And then it says, you know, it's right at this end of the garden. I look up and I will take a picture of it and I'll be right back. You just sit right here. So, okay. So it's in there and that was 15 minutes, 20 minutes. How long does it take to snap a picture of the foxglove? Then I looked up and I saw Linda coming down the path and it looked like she'd been in a car accident. Mud all over. So,
I was trying not to step on the plant. Yeah. Go away. And he went splat anyway.
are you okay?
But the camera was just.
So anyway, that's the history of this. This is on my list of things I really want to have. We have marigolds, different sizes and shapes, but we don't have signet marigold. Many of you have that. You can share seeds with me, or if you're looking to a seed catalog and you see signet marigold, these centifolia, just let me know so I know where to order those seeds. That is really the solid that was used in there.
Yeah, well, I think we had to see the senior building.
Oh, okay.
So we're gonna be sowing Wednesday.
Okay. Next is fennel. We have oceans of this. If anybody needs it. Chest fennel, digestion, indigo, bacteria. That's what I usually refer to as research laxatives. We have last things I need seeds. In bloom right now in our shade garden, the edge of our shade garden is hellebores, Christmas rose or lemon rose. Nervous disorders, hysteria. We have lots of that. Really.
Hysteria.
Which are samples? Milford, I don't have this, but it's definitely a big thing at the Yellow Springs Hospital Garden. Yeah, we have this too. Probably they used a lot of this blood coagulation. It's bleeding. That. And many more. You can see we could be here until 2 in the morning going through that list, but that gives you an idea. Now you've got the list and you can take it from there and just do some more research on it. But the staff that Linda talked about, the nurses, the doctors, that knew that herb bed, they knew exactly where every plant was and exactly where to go to get up with that particular patient. Nurses told you that to help. And with that, then I would ask that you consider being patriotic and grow historical medicinal herbs in your garden. Celebrate and continue to preserve the heritage of growing and appreciating these medicinal herbs. Now, further reading, book goes along with me by Donna Stinnett. was wonderful. In fact, I used part of the passage in the part of the program, the founding gardeners, with presidents in Washington, of course, is at the past. So thank you, Dan, for
One thing that really impressed me about the book, when it's talking about all of those founding gardeners, our first presidents, the presidents are sitting in these meetings, but they're thinking about their gardens.
Yeah.
That's all they can think about. They want to get back to their garden.
another book that I tend to use as a reference, for the American herb recipes. You got very good. Oh, we got that at a sale, I guess. Yeah, prices on it.
Yeah.
Medicinal herbs, cumberbund, the same thing here, though, so that a good resource for that. Another book that I got from Glenna, some master gardener, VAR, and historian extraordinaire, with delicious herb remedies. Enjoy that book too. When we were at the International Master Gardener Conference in Kansas City, I went to a session with Sue Getz, a lecture, and of course she had a book signing as well. Wonderful book, really. And so this is a new book, and I think if you have limited space, only a patio or just a small area, or you're like many of us, limited physical activity, consider herb gardening in containers. And this book really does an excellent job of it. Incidentally, all these books are up there, so if you want to leaf through it at the end, you can do that. Or the search engine on your computer, colonial medicinal herbs, Revolutionary War medical herbs, George Washington medicinal herbs. If you want to stick with the limits to extension information, colonial medicinal herbs, space site, :edu, and that will pick up only the colleges, extension institutions. Presentation dedicated to all of our patriots who fought so bravely for freedom. And probably some of them, unfortunately, live to tell about it. These in particular, Josiah Bugby, Linda's Patriot, Revolutionary War. Had two, Baltus, Brian Baker, Private, Revolutionary War, and one dressed up as different clothes. Henry Frank Jr., Private, Revolutionary War. Thank you very much for your attention. Today's President's Day, George Washington's birthday.
Looks like a picture of them, though.
Do it later. George Washington's birthday, Thursday, and I thought it was good to see a little celebration for him, so. It's hopeful with more.
There's a lot. There's all that. Oh, yeah, I'm just gonna say.
Leo, put your hat on. All right, Leo, step back and let's get out of that. Why?
Any others?
Very good.
Hold on, mother. Everybody gets in.
Oh, perfect.
I have papers going around another handout for you, so Melissa's got those.
So it's really interesting.
Can't believe we're so good.
Thank you, sir.
No, I didn't.
Reading about them and looking into their stuff, which will tell you a little bit about their background. I'm sure that's why they did. The story behind the cookbook story.
The origin of cooking, many don't realize this, but in the colonies, a lot of the settlers were Dutch. And they had a word for cake, and it was cook. Okay, and the problem was, they just go back to the beehive ovens was used for these and cakes and rolls and everything, and it looked something like this. And but temperature probably an issue, and so they had to figure this out. Now that was really very clear, I would imagine. But what they did, 3 ways of figuring out if it's the right temperature for baking cookies or roast or whatever they were doing in it. So first way to do it would be to take a handful of cornmeal, throw it in the oven, and what happened to it? If it just sat there and didn't do anything, too cold, you couldn't make cookies in there. If it went cooked too hot, it would burn your cookies. If it just sat there and smoldered, that's exactly what you wanted to do. It's probably equivalent to 350-degree oven. That's one method.
Cornmeal with cornmeal? With cornmeal?
Cornmeal.
Wow. You do put the shot.
Yeah, that's what we're doing. Okay, the second method, this is the one that was really interesting, I think. It's the arm method. Let's say I had a beehive oven here and it's stalling, and I would take the door off, naturally, and I would stick my arm in it and I would start counting. 1, 2, 3. How far can you go before you say, that's enough? If it was, you couldn't leave it in there for 5, I counted 5, too hot an oven, let the thing die down a little bit. On the other hand, if you had your arm in there, and you counted to 15, too slow, that would never make anything. It was either 8 or 9, seems we counted to 8 or 9, and that would be the right temperature for baking.
And you could tell the baker because they can't hear it.
Well, since the other way, actually, this is really why we're here. Here's the beehive oven, and you see the cookies. Okay. But somebody had the right idea. I'm going to not waste all of my cake batter. I'm going to do just little dabs on a plate. I'm going to put that in and see what happens. And so that's what happened.
Yeah.
This is
Okay, it's starting for a little cookie.
French cookie, little cake. It's kook. And then if they added yay at the end, it means a smaller diminutive version. And so that's, and they were spelling out cookie with a EY and then finally the cookie that we know. But this thing really caught on. You don't have time to bake a whole cake and you want a dessert. I don't even need a fork like you need with a cake. I'll just have that. Thank you very much. You don't use finger food. So that's the story of that.
Cool. Enjoy your story.
Thank you, Doug.
Story about each cookie.
Yeah, the first one, notice in your cookies, and it's a, here's the story. The first one is actually a recipe from Martha, Washington, that was in the early 1780s cookbook from her. And I actually copied it the way that it appeared in that cookbook. It's hard to understand probably.
All your answers look like that.
So it's translated in the darker area in modern terms. So now you want to open your bags and you will see in the foil cup, they're still called Shrewsbury cakes, not cookies, Shrewsbury cakes. It's in the foil.
And anybody who was at the VART on Saturdays probably right. Somebody other than
Try it out. Imagine that you're just kind of munching on that. I've never read that, but I would think that probably this is one of George Washington's favorites. So you're having the same experience now with your.
The next one on the little square piece of tan paper, a plain ordinary oatmeal cookie. There's a story behind oatmeal too. So many of the cultures in the 1700s, oatmeal was animal food. People didn't eat oatmeal. But
We are melding. Wow. And you can see oatmeal cookies mostly from Scotland and England. And I'm sure the Scots and the English really got a ribbing for that because it was considered an animal food in most of the other countries. Here you are eating animal food. But maybe it's not so bad.
and the last one, the cookie was called Joe Fryer. And we all tell you the story behind Joe Fryer. It's like, they're laughing.
Joe Fryer. It was actually Joe Brown was his name, but he was really a black man that fought in the Revolutionary War and lived in his place is actually pictured on the back side of your handout. It's still in existence today. I tried to found and Nicholas' wife, Pressure, that made these cookies. And, the thing is, it's a little bit different texture. Stop and think of, if you look at today's cookies that you get in the supermarket, read what's in them, and what's probably derivatives. Well, they don't have that. These cookies will have that. And neither do these cookies have preservatives in them. But they have to have something to make them last. And so it says, the recipe says rum or apple cider. Whenever we're making cookies in a group like this, or if there's going to be children, we don't use rum. These are made with apple cider. Well,
And there's a difference between using apple cider and apple juice. I'm not sure why, but I tried it with cider and apple juice. And I think they're better than apple cider.
Along the same line, we've got a sign in our kitchen. We always cook with alcohol. Sometimes we even add it to the recipe.
Yeah.
Okay, but this has a couple of things in it. Lucretia would have thought down and got salt water from the bay to make it, but we use water and table salt, the same thing. And also because these cookies were really designed to travel. The use of them was to put them in a barrel, load the barrel onto a ship, and the ship would be gone for several weeks or months. And naturally, they wanted cookies during a period of time, so kind of dry. They kind of dried out so the moisture really hastens the spoiling of the cookies and makes them mold. So that's the story that's sticking to it.
Enjoy your cookies. Remember, there's no preservatives, so you've got to eat them soon.
How many like gooseberry cakes? Okay, how about the Frogger's? By the way, Frogger's. Two people. How many go, you know?
Our Frogger's are a little bit smaller. The original ones were probably the size of a small plate. And the people that came to Joe Frogger's Tavern likened them to the lily pads that were in the pond. So they called them Frogger's.
If you make these, just be aware if they spread. These were done with a 2-inch cookie cutter. You see how.
And